the Senate this week. Not just a snippet, the whole thing. So you can understand the context of the conversation that they are getting ready to violate the Memorandum of Understanding that they urged and requested the State Ports Authority and the City of North Charleston to do in 2002. A plan, an understanding that since then the City of North Charleston, small business owners, homeowners, and more have been basing all of their plans on. And now the state is using it as a toilet paper. They're not keeping their word. And we want to talk about this with the mayor of North Charleston, who I was going to have on the phone. Instead, Mayor Summey came into the studio this morning, and I appreciate the mayor being here on the Big Talker. Good morning, Mayor. How you doing?
Good morning, Richard. Glad to be here.
Say what?
He likes being on TV. That's why I can't.
Well, he likes being on TV with me.
That's right.
We do it all the time on Comcast.
I have to have somebody that makes me look good.
Well, I got to tell you that, in my opinion, what State Senator Larry Grooms is stated this week in the State Senate, what we just played in its entirety to our listeners, makes you look good from the standpoint that they are not keeping their word, and some of the things that he said concerning the State Ports Authority, concerning the Memorandum of Understanding, concerning the fact that there were all these parties that weren't a party to the MOU, to me it's flabbergasting, frustrating. What's your reaction to it, Mayor Summey?
Well, I think that some of the things that have happened in the last couple of weeks, Senator Mike Rose has openly challenged Senator Letterman on the floor of the Senate on the legalities of the MOU. And I think him doing that actually caused some questions by some other senators. What I see happening yesterday, I mean, this came out of the blue, is that they're trying to regroup the troops, making sure everybody's online, that the state's right and the city's wrong, and what have you.
Have you met with State Senator Larry Grooms and had a one-on-one conversation with him about
Several
it?
times.
Okay.
Several times. And
have you met yet with Norfolk Southern?
Norfolk Southern has still not met with me. They're requesting that I come to a meeting next week with Norfolk Southern CSX, Larry Grooms and HIT. But I'm on vacation next week. I requested a meeting this week. They couldn't make it. Our lawsuit will be filed hopefully the first part of the week. And at the end of the day, I think that that's what we're going to have to do. I've been trying to come to a negotiated settlement of this issue that could work for the people of the city of North Charleston. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to have to be determined by a court of law.
Let me stop you there, because the court of law, I mean, obviously I'm not a lawyer and I don't even play one on radio or whatever, but there's going to be some legal, hemming and hawing about the Memorandum of Understanding, binding, non-binding, so on and so forth, and we'll have that discussion here in a second. But ethically, I want to talk about the ethics of this, because you can split legal hairs all you want to, but the ethics of having the Memorandum of Understanding signed at the urging of the state legislature, approved with special legislation with Act 256 and Act 356 by the state legislature. Now, after almost 9 years and development plans that the city of North Charleston has been going forward with, and all the people that have moved into the Park Circle area, small business owners and more, ethically speaking, there seems to be no defense for what is going on.
None. And the most surprising thing is they keep saying the agreement is with the State Port Authority. State Port Authority's kept out of this completely. Where are they? When are they going to stand up and say, we made this agreement? Are we going to honor it? Are we going to work to say, state, you should be honoring what we said? No. They're sitting back. I want you to look at some of the things that's happened lately. BMW is a major tenant in bringing the vehicles in to be shipped out. Now, if they're so important, why aren't we building a brand new railroad facility to provide the service that they need now? Instead, what are we doing? What's happening in the city of Charleston? They're building a new cruise ship terminal, and they're taking all the containers out of that port terminal, which is the closest to the international waters. It is the port of Charleston. You realize that when this moves, there will be no container port operation in Charleston? It will be Mount Pleasant and North Charleston. And so we had 3 container terminal locations. 2 deep water access, 1 medium level access. They're going to close a deep water access terminal to containers when they needed to build a fourth. Now, what kind of business perspective and business plan is this? You know, things do change. When things change, you come to the table and say, things change, let's see what we can do to make it work. That has not happened. They are not trying to work with us. They're trying to make us look like the enemy of the economy,
Yes.
the enemy of the port. Let me tell you something. I like steak, you know, so I like to see cows live and survive. I'm not going to feed them my children so I can have steak. You know, so I like the port activity and the business, but I'm not going to sell my community out for that port operation. It can be worked where it works for the Port Authority, it works for the businesses and industries in the state of South Carolina without sticking the shaft to the city of North Charleston. And that's all we have asked for. But the state has not come to the table. They've not tried to work it out. They are putting us in a position, as of the first 3 months of the year, we spent $75,000 in legal fees, outside legal fees. And that's just the beginning of the tip of the iceberg.
One of the claims that State Senator Larry Grooms makes concerning of the city of North Charleston's plan with CSX is that even in the city of North Charleston's plan, there's still rail running out of the northern end of the base, pointing at the Virginia Avenue area there near the northern end of the Navy base, and saying that even your plan, even the city's plan, the CSX's plan, doesn't remove rail running out of the northern end of the base, and he makes that saying so they're not even staying in the line.
He is incorrect. It does not put any rail out the north end of the Navy base. The rail that already exists outside the base would continue. That's not part of the plan. That's not. We have said all along, we'll take the rail we've got. We will take additional rail in the areas that are not crowded. If you were to look at the overhead and you were there and you've seen the presentation it made to show where the south routes go, where the north routes go, which one affects the most neighborhoods?
Well, obviously the northern.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's what it's doing is adding more trains to already overloaded lines. This morning, I went to leave my house. I got down Attaway Street. There's 22 cars ahead of me in line waiting on a train that Norfolk Southern is crossing that track at a speed of less than 2 miles per hour. Okay? Now they're going down to North Red. They've got it blocked too. For me to get out of my neighborhood, I have got to go down and come back out and go Montague Avenue to I-26 if there's not a CSX train crossing that line.
Hence the reason why when you're driving down 526 and you look at the North Charleston Coliseum matrix board, you will see occasionally popping up a picture of your two grandkids sitting on railroad tracks saying, please, no more rails.
You know, we accept what we have. We're proud of the businesses and industries that we're having. You know, and we're supporters of the port. I mean, we're letting them build a new terminal in North Charleston. But when we said that, it said that there would be no more rail through the north of the base. Now, let me tell you something. Here's what you have to look at. If the Port Authority says there's no more rail through the north end of the base, and some private line comes in there and builds it, they're not talking about a private line building. They're talking about the state of South Carolina building this thing. Where in the state of Georgia doesn't run their rail terminals?
Well, the SC Public Railways, correct me if I'm wrong, they've never run an intermodal facility.
They haven't.
Never.
And even Senator Grooms has told me in the past he was not in favor of that, and now, speaking before the Senate, he's changed his tone. And you got to remember, I have a lot of respect for Larry Grooms. I like Larry Grooms. I like most of the guys serving in the Senate. Most. Okay?
No names need to be mentioned. Understood.
But you need to understand that when it comes to what's right and wrong for my community, I'm going to stand up and fight. My city council is going to stand up and fight. We're not going to be bullied through this thing. And if it needs to go in front of a judge for a summary judgment, that's fine. If that's not what is acceptable to us, then we'll take it to the Supreme Court. We're not going to sit back and let what we've worked so diligently for to make our quality of life better, including the rail that comes through our community, including the industry that comes to our community. If we were to sit back and allow this to happen without fighting for what is right, whether you believe in Amazon and what they were given or not, we have another example today of the state backing away from its word.
It's creating a culture of deceit, of the state not keeping its word and the promises made. And we have North Charleston Mayor Summey in the studio. And when looking at this, first, there's already, you're telling me, first of all, that you think the lawsuit will be filed as soon as next week.
Yes.
There's already litigation going on now with some of the land issues. I mean, in other words, the city of North Charleston donated to Clemson some of this land that the state is now taking back.
72 acres.
And the state is now taking that back so they can build this rail
Plus,
facility.
they're condemning 10 acres from us and other property on the base, including Noisette's property.
And in fact, you downzone certain areas and change some of the general zoning laws to allow this idea to go forward.
Absolutely.
And now they're reneging on these ideas. I had an instant messenger want to know if the city can start rezoning property on the base to make life miserable for the state. Is that something that's been considered?
We've considered every angle we can go at. I'm not so sure that will work. But when you stop and take into consideration, when we gave the land to Clemson, there was a grant available to Clemson. And the property that we gave to Clemson, including the other 10 or so acres, was appraised by the state at $34 million. Well, now they're coming back and asking for 72 acres of that, plus 10 acres we've got is 82 acres, plus other acreage on the base, and somewhere with a value of $11 million. Which they paid $22 million for property on the Navy base that doesn't meet their needs for a rail terminal. They paid $22 million for it. The Department of Commerce paid $22 million for it, which was the full value of the mortgage note on the foreclosed property, and there's nobody in the state of South Carolina today that pays full value on a mortgage foreclosure except the state of South Carolina.
We asked Attorney Andy Savage this question last week, and I wanted to ask you because he seemed to think that there was not many litigation possibilities when it comes to homeowners who have been moving into that area and purchased homes since the MOU was signed in 2002, because I know when you had a public meeting and you asked how many people have moved here since then, most of the people in the room raised their hands. Somebody's asking about tangible damages to property values. Is that something that you talked about with your residents in that portion of town?
Absolutely, and I'm not so sure that, nobody knows exactly what the courts will hear, but I think it would be worthwhile if this thing goes through that we file a class action lawsuit on behalf of every resident in that community.
So I guess my final question for you, Mayor Summey, and I appreciate you stopping by on short notice this morning, is, just your reaction emotionally, the reaction that you have and your colleagues in City Council and constituents since hearing the words of State Senator Larry Grooms on the floor of the State Senate this week, just your initial reaction and how you feel about it now that you've had time to sort of digest what was said.
Well, at first I was shocked, and I don't like to react too fast because sometimes I say things I shouldn't when I do. But after looking at it and looking at the actions on the floor, I was told this past first of the week that there were some senators across the state beginning to wonder what the legal ramifications were for the state of South Carolina because of some of the things Senator Rose has said on the floor of the Senate in debating with Senator Leatham. And I'm not so sure that they were trying to regroup the troops by saying we have no legal ramifications. That's his opinion, and I like him, and I appreciate his opinion. But that's not our opinion. That's not our attorney's opinion. And that's why we have courts to see what we do, how it's settled.
So it sounds like there won't be any kind of compromise or any kind of there's been discussion of maybe even having a third party sort of run the intermodal facility because SE Public Railways has never run an intermodal facility like that. Would that be an accepting idea, maybe? Or?
We would be willing to look at it. They do that in New York called Conrail. Mm-hmm. But, the bottom line is that I have, I tried to establish a meeting Thursday of this week, offered to go to Columbia to sit down and talk in a last-ditch effort prior to filing the lawsuit. Once we file the lawsuit, the gauntlet has been cast.
And the lawsuit will be filed next week?
Yes.
And then it's going to be up to the courts. At taxpayer